Before you begin the repair, make sure you have the necessary materials and personal protective equipment (PPE). What I'm using is an anti-static mat and anti-static wristband for my PPE, and I'm using tweezers, 3 different spudgers, though I only use the pick-like and bar-like spudgers in this repair, and a screwdriver for my tools. As a disclaimer, I was using different screwdrivers with other people during this repair, so the screwdriver's appearance changes very often during the videos. uh, you also need to make sure that any long hair is tied back, long jewelry is removed to refrain from any issues with these, and that the anti-static wristband's metal piece is firmly against your skin, not tight, just snug, so that it actually works. Yes. To begin the repair, the base cover must first be removed. Locate the 9 screws on the back of the Chromebook, and then using a correctly sized screwdriver, not too big or too little, loosen all 9 of the screws. They do not need to be fully removed to take off the cover, which can help with organization. After loosening the screws, use a spudger, I use the pick-like one, to disconnect the snaps of the cover from the Palmrest assembly. Rotating your arm can help make the job easier. Some force may be applied, but do not apply so much that you damage the Chromebook or spudger. After removing the base cover, set it aside. The second step of the repair is to remove the battery of the Chromebook. The battery is connected by a cable to the motherboard and 3 screws. Begin the removal by disconnecting the cable and moving it aside. There was no cable lock on this Chromebook, but it is important to check just in case. Locate the 3 screws that hold the battery down and unscrew them, and then set them aside. I put mine where the back cover screws would normally go since I didn't fully take mine out. Carefully remove the battery from the Chromebook, grabbing it from the top and bottom rather than the further apart left and right. Set the battery aside. For 4GE enabled Chromebooks, there will be a WWAN card that would be removed next. This Chromebook does not have one, but if you do, then you would pull that straight out without lifting up on it. Next, remove the speakers from the Chromebook. There are no screws, but there's a cable connected to the motherboard and a thin wire connecting the 2 speakers. First, disconnect the speaker cable from the motherboard, ensuring it is out of the way. Then remove the speaker with the cable attached and carefully remove the wire until the second speaker is detached. Set the speakers aside. Typically, the next step on this type of Chromebook is to remove the display assembly. However, while I was recording the raw video, I removed the display assembly brackets and input brackets at the same time, and the order of removal after the WWAN card is removed is not as strict, so I let it be. Here, I remove the brackets covering the display cable and Wi-Fi antennas, both of which have 1 screw, and then the 2 input brackets, both of which have 2 screws. Make sure to group the brackets with their respective screws separately so the screws don't get mixed up. I made a mistake. I was rushing and misread the text on my screen. The Chromebook should be laying flat. Make sure the Chromebook is not closed before proceeding. Once the brackets are removed, the next step is to remove the display assembly. Disconnect the display cable and Wi-Fi cables. Then remove the 6 screws and the hinges, 3 on each side, and remove the display assembly from the Palmrest assembly. You'll see that as I remove the cover, since it was not opened properly, a cover for one of the hinges fell off. I can tell that someone did this before me as well, since there was only one hinge cover when I began the repair. Please ensure the Chromebook is fully open before removing the display assembly. Next is the removal of the motherboard. First, it is important to ensure all cables are removed. Due to the order I've been going in, I only have to remove the touchpad cable and keyboard ribbon. However, it is important to check anyway. Once all cables are removed, the motherboard can be unscrewed. There are 3 screws on the left half with no light tape where the input-output board would usually be, and there are 4 screws on the right half with the black tape. Remove all 7 screws. Then remove the motherboard by carefully picking it up from the top and bottom instead of the further left and right or the thin part of the bottom right of the board. Set it aside. Next is the removal of the touchpad. The touchpad bracket is held down by 3 screws. Remove them and the bracket. The touchpad itself is also held down by 3 screws. Remove the screws. I placed them with the bracket screws since the screws are different and I won't get them confused. Gently peel off the ribbon cable, place your hand under the keyboard, and gently push the touchpad out. The final part to be removed from the Palmrest assembly is the keyboard. There are 2 holes labeled KB, short for keyboard, that you insert a tool to push the keyboard snaps out. I use tweezers. Be mindful of the ribbon cable. As the keyboard is removed, it should go straight out. You'll see the keyboard lattice come off of the keyboard that I'm taking out. That is a known issue with this Chromebook and is abnormal, but it is not important enough for us to care. As I was removing the keyboard, I found that one snap was getting caught. Of course, tried to remove it with my spudger, but I didn't think to use my hand until the very end. If one or two snaps get stuck during your keyboard removal, gently push the palm rest with your hand. That was the easiest method I could get it out. At the end, I reattached the lattice back onto the keyboard and then I set it aside. You are now left with the broken Palmrest assembly. Set it aside and get your replacement. Now the parts that were previously set aside must be put back into the Palmrest. We start with the keyboard. Align the keyboard so that the back snaps are in the holes, but you can still access the top of the Palmrest. As you lower the keyboard, make sure the ribbon cable goes all the way through without getting caught. Then press on the keyboard to ensure all the snaps are in place. The touchpad is next to be replaced. Carefully align the touchpad so it is fully seated. Rescrew in the touchpad screws. Then place and screw in the touchpad bracket. Take care not to mix up the two types of screws. The motherboard is the next part to be replaced. Carefully align the motherboard so it is fully seated. You might have to put the board in at an angle and gently pull at the palm rest to get the input seated properly. Replace the keyboard and touchpad ribbon cables and lock them in. Rescrew the 7 screws as well. If you forget where a screw is placed, you can put the brackets or base cover on top to ensure a screw hole is not meant for a different part. Remember that the uncovered left has 3 screws and the covered right has 4. The display assembly is the next part to be replaced. Align the brackets so that the display assembly is seated at 180 degrees. Rescrew in the 6 screws, 3 on each hinge, making sure to alternate so that the display assembly remains seated. Close the display assembly carefully, ensuring that any cables are not getting caught and there is no resistance or odd noises. If you have not yet rescrewed the input brackets, do so now. Remember that there are 2 screws per bracket. Reattach the display cable and Wi-Fi antenna. The Wi-Fi antenna might be hard to replace. I use the spudger to help me press down on them. Replace the display cable and Wi-Fi antenna brackets. Remember that they have 1 screw each. While you are performing a repair, you must remain aware of your surroundings. This is placed in the middle of this repair video because everyone forgets this if it is at the beginning or end. This is Barrett. Barrett does not want a screwdriver in his eye. Be mindful. Next is the speaker replacement. Place in the speaker not connected to the motherboard so that the silicone rings go around their respective holes. Carefully seat the cable connecting the speakers so it does not move easily. Use the spudger as necessary. Replace the speaker that is connected to the motherboard where it should go. Attach the speaker cable to the motherboard. The last relatively fragile part to be replaced in the Palmrest assembly is the battery. Carefully place the battery in the assembly so it is fully seated. Rescrew the 3 screws and reattach the battery cable to the motherboard. The last part to be added back to the Chromebook is the back cover. Carefully align the back cover to the Palmrest assembly and snap it back into place by pressing down all over it. Make sure to get the center, edges, corners, and hinges. Rescrew all 9 screws, but be careful not to over tighten them. Now that the repair is over, you can take off your PPE and clean up your workspace. Good job.